Nothing in Noor Inayat Khan's path foretold the changes this princess, whose ancestry ended with one of the sultans of India, underwent throughout her lifetime. Noor al-Niza, who was raised in a Sufi household, would not accept that she would have to watch while the Nazis invaded several nations in Europe. A statue of a young woman may be found at Gordon Square in the heart of London, the capital of the United Kingdom. The beginning and finish dates of Noor Inayat Khan's 30-year life are 1914 and 1944, as written on the statue's body. Statues and memorials should only be built for persons who the societies they belong to or to whom they have performed significant services think deserving of recognition. This will allow them to continue to be remembered by the public for future generations. At the well-known Gordon Square in London, Princess Anne, the daughter of Queen Elizabeth II, oversaw the dedication of the Noor Inayat Khan statue in the winter of 2012. Who was this young woman with privilege and tremendous honor? What kind of services did she offer? For the benefit of governments or organizations, they gather and analyze sensitive information. They carry out covert operations, infiltration, and other forms of surveillance to obtain information about prospective threats or to their advantage. Because of the often secretive nature of their employment, it calls for extreme discretion and professionalism. They could work covertly or assume different identities. They need a high level of skill, training, and mental toughness for their work, which can be dangerous. Their practice frequently involves emotional deceit and manipulation. Indian Muslim princess Noor Inayat Khan is descended from Inayat Khan, an Indian Sufi who is regarded as the father of the global Sufi movement. He was a writer, philosopher, educator, and musician, from the family of Tipu Sahid, also known as Tipu Sultan, the founder of the Indian Sultanate of Mysore in the 18th century. One of the most ardent opponents of the British conquest of India was Tipu Sultan, who was even murdered in a combat with British troops in the year 1799. Her mother, Aura Ray Baker, is an American, and her father, Hazrat Inayat Khan, met her in USA. And in 1913, they got married in London before relocating to Tsarist Russia. They welcomed their first child a year later, in Moscow, in 1914, and gave her the multifaceted name Noor Nisa. The Inayat Khan family relocated to London in 1917, just before the Bolshevik Revolution began, and settled in the Gordon Square district. Inayat Khan established his Sufi school there with the intention of illuminating it via music. 4 years later, the family relocated to Paris, France, where they lived in a variety of suburban areas until one of his devotees, a wealthy Dutch woman, gave him money to buy him a home in Suren, which he dubbed the House of Blessings. After returning to India, which he described as the source of knowledge, Hazrat Inayat Khan passed away there on February 5, 1927, not long after. Noor Nisa succeeded her father as the sex administrator, where she was given a solid upbringing. She was taught manners and tolerance, and her brother Hidayat Inayat Khan, a musician and composer of classical music in Britain and France who passed away in 2016 at the age of 99, as well as her love of poetry and music became apparent. She resembled her father in many ways. Her life suffered a significant upheaval in 1939, when World War II officially began. She broke off her engagement to a French man after being engaged to him for many years. She made the decision to enroll in the nursing program with her younger sister, Carol Nisa. The family of Inayat Khan, who was of English citizenship, had to flee Paris as soon as Nazi German forces arrived there on June 14, 1940. Except for Hidayat, who chose to stay in Paris with his wife and their children, all of the family members went for England. It was not easy to escape from Paris. Noor al-Niza led her family members on a journey that took them through Tours, Bordeaux, and finally to Verdun, where she succeeded in putting everyone on board the Belgian merchant ship Songo, sailing to the port of Falmouth in the far south of England, where they arrived on the morning of June 22, 1940. One of the tenets of the Sufi sect her father created, nonviolence, was abandoned by Noor al-Niza due to the ongoing war in Europe and the Nazi occupation that took place under various European nations. She had made the decision to help fight the Nazis. Noor Nisa joined the Women's Auxiliary Air Force on November 19. She received in-depth instruction in radio communications and radio operation in Edinburgh, was given the pseudonym Nora Baker, and stated on her data card that she spoke French fluently, making her qualified to do sensitive assignments. Sent to the RAF Bomber Operations Center at Abington on June 10, 1941. Its goal was to make touch with the bombs as they flew. She gained valuable wireless communications skills during this operation. She was able to modify her way of life to fit the constraints imposed by the conflict. She developed the capacity to work non-stop for the duration required and sleep for only a few hours. She made the decision to join the military's intelligence branch in late 1941 while she was looking for promotion to the rank of lieutenant. Her life underwent an incredible transformation at that precise time. The path she's taken leads to assignments that can only be given to someone who can demonstrate that they have excellent qualifications that ensure their achievement. Nora Baker, who was then 28 years old, was sent to Camp Bassett in the spring of 1942, where she spent several weeks undergoing instruction in communication skills for users of covert radios. She was asked to appear for a meeting at the Victoria Hotel on October 10, 1942. The British Army Research Office had scheduled a job interview, not a news conference. Selwyn Jepson, a well-known author who was a member of the Special Operations Squad that Prime Minister Winston Churchill first launched 2 years ago, conducted her interview. She was invited to join the team by Jepson. The likelihood of a safe return from those activities was less than 50%, according to her evaluation of the tasks that would be given to her and the hazards involved in their execution. She is currently a young adult, age 29. She formally joined the Special Operations Implementation Team on February 8, 1943, and started a rigorous training program. After completing it, she was promoted to second lieutenant in the Women's Auxiliary Air Force, WAAF. They told her that she would not wear the military uniform and would not be paid for the uniform, and that her yearly income was £350 sterling. This meant that when she completed the tasks given to her, she will not be protected by the Geneva Convention's protections for prisoners of war if she is taken captive by the enemy. Her last skydiving practice was to take place in May. In order to contribute to the war effort inside Nazi-occupied France, the British used clandestine operations. Nora Baker was without a doubt more qualified to take part in these operations. The Prosper Physician Network, a special operations unit based in Paris and led by British agent Gilbert Norman, requests immediate assistance. The first network set up by British intelligence in France to stave off the Nazi occupation was this one. Similarly, Noor's parachuting training was not finished, so she was sent immediately to Paris. She was ineligible to use a parachute. The only option is to take a nearby nighttime airplane landing to get there. Noor al-Nisa has been tasked with overseeing the Phono Wireless Communications Network, a division of the Prosper Physician Network. Thus, Noor al-Nisa became the first woman to oversee covert radio communications in France while it was occupied by the Nazis. Noor only had a falsified identification card, ration cards, and medications, a rousing substance that keeps her up and a sedative that she uses to put someone to sleep. In case she decides that dying is preferable to falling into the enemy's hands, she also has a fatal cyanide pill in her suitcase. It was decided that the radio you would use would be sent on a separate trip. Noor was flown to France by two Westland Lysander aircraft on the 16th and 17th of June during the night. Henri Dericourt, a French pilot and intelligence officer, piloted the aircraft, which made an emergency landing at Villevec, Maine-et-Loire. The name Madeleine appears on Noor al-Nisa's identification documents. She departed for Paris from the closest train station. She knocked on the door of an apartment on the evening of June 17 at 40 Erlanger Street, which is today in the 16th arrondissement of Paris. Henri Guéry, the president of Phono Network, met her and introduced her to his fiancée. He went with her the following day to the Grignon National Agricultural School. In that school was the headquarters of a network of French resistance fighters of the Nazi occupation linked to the Prosper Physician Network. The German political police, the Gestapo, detained 3 members of this network 2 days after she arrived in Paris. Madeleine was forced to wait 3 days before the communication gadget and other intended uses arrived. The Gestapo soon became aware of Noor's presence, as the resistance fighters immediately saw. She attended Henri Guéry's wedding to his fiancée on June 29. Although she had promised to stop by their apartment on the Rue Erlanger in the evening, someone had forewarned her not to. Later, she discovered that Gestapo agents had visited the area. She took a bike ride on July 1. She traveled to the National School of Agriculture's offices in order to communicate with the resistance. Before reaching its destination, she noticed that the German policeman had preceded her there. Noor al-Nisa oversaw the spy networks operating within the ranks of the French resistance to the Nazi occupation for more than 3 months. She was aware that those groups included double agents, and her reserve margin was insufficient. She abruptly vanished from view, and the precise day she was captured by the Gestapo is unknown. The discussion pertains to the 11th, 12th, and 13th of October. It is claimed that Henri Guéry's sister betrayed him by selling Noor to the Germans for 100,000 francs. It is also claimed that the pilot Henri Dericourt was responsible for the betrayal. When she saw that there were German police officers at the building's entrance as she was en route to her home, she slowed down and went into a parallel alley. She saw that the Germans appeared to have left when she looked. The steps accelerated, but someone caught her as soon as she passed the building's door. She could recognize the man's face as he squeezed her till he pulled a revolver and laid it against her chest. Noor was given to the leader of the French Gestapo. A communication device and a notebook containing the codes she used to send letters to British intelligence officers were found in her chamber. Noor al-Nisa resisted German occupation with extraordinary tenacity and was sent to the Dachau detention camp in southern Germany together with 3 of her network's agents. She was tortured in various ways while being held in solitary confinement for 10 months. When the Nazis despaired of her revealing all her secrets, they executed her by firing squad. This happened on September 10, 1944. She was 30 years old.